Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Moss Jackson. Welcome to Mondays with Moss. It's a pretty rainy day here in Newtown Square. I got my cup of tea with honey in it, and I've been looking forward to chatting with you again about basically, what do we need to do to get through life? What do we need to know about navigating through life? But before I start to talk about the topic today, I just want to share with you, I'm feeling a little depleted today, a little less energy than I normally have. I was thinking about it. Because it's a rainy day, because I know sometimes I'm more sun responsive rather than rain responsive. Then I thought maybe it's Monday, because sometimes it takes some energy to start the week. But then I reflected, hi Linda, I gave a talk yesterday to a group called Healing Masters in Portugal. It was a Zoom presentation. I think I'm not sure how many people there were in the live audience, but there were about 1,000 people kind of around the world who were listening. I was not the only presenter, there were quite a few. But I talked about fear. You don't have to suffer. And I think what happened was, I'm feeling a little depleted because I put a lot of energy into preparation for the talk. And I'm looking back at how I went about it. I've talked in these conversations with you, the importance of having a toolkit to manage yourself as you go through life, particularly when you have a big hill to climb or something to do. And I worked hard on it and rehearsed it a lot. I gave a really good presentation. I liked it a lot. I think that people are going to enjoy it and get a lot. And eventually it'll be on YouTube, and I'll let you know. But I failed to do something. I failed to practice recovery time. Remember, we talked about life being a high performer is like running like a sprinter. You sprint, you work hard for an hour to an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, but then you need to take a break. I don't think I took much of a break over the last few days. It was on my mind. So even though I may not have been actively working it, it stayed inside of me. Excuse me. I want to share that with you because it's really important to notice either before, like I'm noticing I'm going to give a talk, so what can I do to prepare and take my tools out before I do the task? During, what can I do as I'm working through it to take the timeouts, to practice self-awareness, to practice self-control, or after. So today, for example, this is after the talk. After I do this, I'm going to have a pretty light schedule. Probably talk to 3 people in therapy or coaching. I could see a couple more, but I don't think I'm going to do that today. So I think I'm going to practice my recovery time. So I just wanted to let you know that. So if I seem a little subdued, it's only because I'm a little tired and a little depleted, energy depleted. So my talk basically today is, what do you need to know about navigating your life? It does take focus, work, and resilience. We've been going through, 9 months now of the pandemic and the economic upheaval, racial unrest, and political chaos. So during the pandemic, just to kind of review this, we've gone through several stages. First was the shock, waking up and saying, this is really real. Then the lockdown, being isolated. And a lot of people who live alone have had a really hard time with it. Sometimes people who live with their mates have had a hard time with it too. And also if your children are at home, it disrupts your normal pattern, particularly if you're a working mom and dad. It throws everyone, the whole family, into stress. We're hoping for the vaccine. I'm hoping for a vaccine. I would like it to be towards the end of this year. But to tell you the truth, there's still confusion and uncertainty. There's an increase in anxiety, depression, and suicide. In fact, this past month, I read in the New York Times that Japan has reported more suicides in this month than the entire year of COVID cases. That's amazing. So the beast has not yet been slain. So be careful. Take care of yourselves. So what have you noticed for yourself? maybe kind of taking a time out and saying, okay, what do I notice about myself having going through the pandemic, but the end chapter may be coming closer than, hopefully, in terms of a vaccine. Well, for some of you, there's been a lot of misery, tragedy, anxiety, and scarcity. For others, it's been rocky but manageable. And then for a third group, maybe learning, creativity, practicing safety, being realistically optimistic. Be able to say, look, it's tough, but it's going to all turn out okay. Hi, Lois. But it's going to turn out okay. In other words, we're all getting through this. And we're all making through it, but not necessarily on the same path or the same way. So, in a way, you may be thinking about may want to think about this as three paths that you might be on, one of three paths as you walk this path called life. So imagine one path is we're going to the same destination. We want to achieve something, but eventually we're going to die. But before we die, we want to have as good a life as possible. So one path is, I'm going to call it the path of suffering, the victim path. It feels too hard, too impossible. For example, I had a patient once, Donald, making that name. He's about 30. Hi, Fran. He's about 30 years old, not very grown up, but still living with his mother, living a pretty aimless life, feeling overwhelmed, living in a dream world that one day he was going to make it big. But he wasn't doing anything to make it happen. He was just dreaming. And what he lacked in terms of the toolkit, remember we've been talking about the toolkit? He lacked courage, he lacked focus, he lacked resilience, he felt angry and terrified, but he just couldn't, he's not moving, okay? That's what I would call the path of victimhood. There's a second path that I would call the survivor path. These individuals strive a lot. They're fighters who make something happen, but sometimes they leave a wake of roadkill along the way. They might be accomplished, but they often feel kind of lonely and resentful. I'll succeed no matter what. So I had a patient once, let's call him Richard, pretty narcissistic, Napoleonic complex, rich, angry, terrible marriage. He lacked self-awareness, lacked total self-control, particularly over anger. He used the anger to cover up his fear and feelings of inadequacy, no empathy, and very little compassion. He was a real pain in the ass, very difficult guy to work with. Fortunately, through a lot of work, he was able to become aware of his lack, and he learned to develop some of the tools and moved into, I'm going to call it a high survivor. He didn't quite get into the path of navigator, which is the third path. The third path, living life as a navigator, it's a bit rocky like the others. No one's immune to this. But it's a path clearly marked with a sense of direction. You know where you're going. You face the same obstacles, but you create a smoother journey by having supports around you, scaffolding. Like, for example, I'm sharing with you that I'm feeling a bit depleted today. So navigators are not ashamed or embarrassed to say, I'm struggling today. It's okay. It's not a big deal. It's not personal. So they create support. Navigators tend to be resilient. We make mistakes, we fail, but we bounce back. Practice empathy and self-compassion, empathy towards others, but also empathy towards ourselves. And hopefully navigators have quite a bit of self-awareness. They know what their weaknesses are, or they know their strength, they know what they're feeling and thinking. And they use the other tools from the Navigating for Success toolkit that I've been talking about over the last few months. So I wonder, what path are you on? Survivor, victim, navigator? Are you using the tools? Are you aware of any tools that you're missing? So last 6 months hi John, I've been talking about how to better navigate your lives. In other words, I've attempted to give you a perspective, a formula, a GPS. So the formula basically is living a good life to me, being successful in whatever form that takes, is it's good to have a passion or a purpose and be able to set some goals that are in alignment with that have what I call high impact actions, actions that make sense, that will pay off if you practice them, along with resilience. So success in life equals passion plus goals plus actions plus resilience, okay? And then there are a bunch of tools we've been talking about, essential tools. For example, one of the early things I talked about, hey, good to see you, Larry. One of the early conversations we had together was the invisible forces called your limiting beliefs. You have negative beliefs, I can't do it, life's too hard, I never catch a break. Or is it life's doable? Yeah. Life, there's abundance. So we have these invisible forces, often which we don't even know we have, but they're there. That it's like a filter that kind of guides us. So perspective in how we see life. Remember talking about self-awareness? Are you aware of your thoughts, feelings, strengths, and weaknesses? Nothing happens unless you're self-aware. Big one is controlling your anger and your fear. When fear and anger get too large, it floods your thinking brain, shuts your thinking brain down by around 30-40%, and that's why we act like jerks. And then we feel guilty or ashamed afterwards. So self-control is a pretty important tool. Another really important tool, if you want to get along with people, is empathy, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and appreciate what they're going through. You know, one of the most powerful skills is listening, not talking. Listening gains more information from you. So rather than trying to persuade, allow people to express their opinion first and just appreciate what they're saying. A really big tool is separating fact from story. Am I making up a story and believing it? Or have I checked out my story and found out I have very little evidence and give it up and come up with a better story? A growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. A growth mindset, you make mistakes and you learn from them. A fixed mindset is, no, I got to be perfect. So if I make a mistake, it's a tragedy, it's terrible. Remember results orientation, being focused on what am I going towards? So if I deviate from my goal, can I take a recovery break, get back on the path and continue working towards it? I remember when I wanted to write my first book, I called my brother up, who's a very accomplished writer. I said, Bruce, give me some guidance in writing a book. And he said, well, this is one thing I think you should do. Every day, take at least a half hour, sit at your computer or your pad, and write or think about what you want to write. And that's it. Don't do anything else. So I think what that was about was focus and really taking small bites. Remember, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So being able to do that was really, really helpful. And it took me about a year to write the book. And I used that model. Just don't try to write the whole thing. Don't try to eat the elephant at one time. Taking responsibility. Don't blame other people for what happens. The best you can do is say, what role did I play in this? What can I do to be engaging rather than blaming other people? I think that's a big tool. And the results orientation, back to my book. I kept focusing on every day, this is going to result in a contribution I'm going to make. So I wrote my first book, Navigating for Success. A really important tool, I don't know if you remember this, is self-compassion and giving yourself rewards. Taking breaks. I didn't do that very well this weekend or the last week. I didn't realize it. But now that I do, because I have a growth mindset, today I'm going to take it easy, have my cup of tea, finish my tea, and okay. So anyway, we're not born with any of this. Everything I'm telling you is what we call epigenetic. We have to learn it. And if you have a growth mindset and you have some good support around you, we create it. And as we create it, we start to feel like we have some control. Life is really safe. We're enjoying it. Rather than it happening to us, we're creating something in our life. That's what I mean by navigating life. Navigating an extraordinary life is simply taking responsibility, having a direction and a purpose, and having some tools, and maybe some coaching to move in that direction. So bottom line, we all basically want the same things. We want success. We want a sense of accomplishment. We want love and satisfaction. Maybe something else I'm missing, but to me, I think that's what most of what we want. But it takes a long time to figure this out, sometimes a lifetime. It's okay. You don't have to figure it out. in a week or a weekend or one training or a year. It's okay. We have a whole lifetime to figure this out. And every time we figure something out or slip and forget and regain the learning, it's a way of patting yourself in the back and say, oh, I forgot, rather than being ashamed or embarrassed. It helps to have purpose, helps to have a focus in your life, and have some skills and take one step at a time. Life is not a race. It isn't doing anything to you. Life is not doing anything to you. You might want to think about that one. You may have fear and pain, but you don't have to suffer. So this current series that I've been talking about, I was hoping to create it as a background, like a spring training, to give you a perspective on, what is life, what's the formula, what are some of the tools. And I'd like to now, next week, start moving into something I'm going to call, based upon another book I wrote, 52 Things, which is 52 things you need to know. In other words, every week I'm going to start this. Yeah, I hope you'll like it. I'm going to take one aspect of living a great life. It could be compassion. It could be resilience. I'm going to keep it simple. Talk about the theme. What's the focus? What is the skill? Give you some actions you might take. And just for that week, that's the only thing you're going to do. I'm not going to make it complicated. It's not going to be much of a lecture. And hopefully that will complement what we've been talking about over the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months. So I'm excited about it. I've been looking at the book. It's on my shelf, 52 Things. And I'm going to pull that off and start reading the chapters and start taking the chapters that I think might be most appropriate for you guys. And we'll see how it goes. So until that time, I don't know what you're going to do today. I'm not going out again. I'm done going out. I went out this morning. I didn't like it. It was rainy, cold, damp. Came home, put on my turtleneck. I'm feeling a little warmer. Got my cup of tea. Turned on some Bach. Turned on my fireplace. Have a nice little lunch. And then see my 3 clients in the afternoon. All right, guys. Be well. Happy Thanksgiving post. And I'll see you in a week.